When was the last time you let yourself be sad? Not depressed, not having a breakdown, just sad. That low, quiet feeling that settles in your chest when you're alone. The kind that makes you stare out windows or reread old messages or lie in bed an extra hour for no particular reason. If you're like most people in 2026, the answer is you didn't let it happen. You fixed it. Because sadness in our current moment is treated like a system error. It's a glitch in your neurochemistry, a dip in your productivity metrics, something to be hacked away with a meditation app, a workout, a scroll through your phone, or, if it persists, a visit to your doctor to discuss medication. We have pathologized the feeling itself. Being sad is unproductive time, and unproductive time is wasteful, and waste is unacceptable. But here's what we've lost in that scramble to optimize our emotional lives. There used to be a word for a very specific kind of sadness, a state that was deeper than a bad mood but distinct from clinical depression. A bittersweet, contemplative awareness of life's transience. A feeling that philosophers argued about, poets celebrated, and painters tried to capture. It was called melancholy, and we killed it. To be clear, sadness, depression, and melancholy are three different things. Sadness is reactive. You're sad because something happened. Your team lost, your friend moved away, you watched a movie that gutted you. It's sharp and then it fades. Depression is medical. It's the inability to function, the weight that makes getting out of bed feel like lifting a car. It's chronic, it's brutal, and it often requires intervention. We should treat it, we should take it seriously. But melancholy was something else entirely. It wasn't a response to an event. It wasn't a diagnosable illness. It was a state, a mood you could slip into without a clear cause. You could be melancholic on a beautiful day. You could feel it while reading a poem or walking through an old cemetery or watching the light change at dusk. It was the feeling of being acutely aware that everything you love will end, that time is passing, that beauty and loss are inseparable. And for most of human history, this wasn't considered a bug, it was considered a feature. In fact, for over 2,000 years, melancholy was believed to be the emotional prerequisite for genius. To understand how melancholy became linked to brilliance, we have to go back to ancient Greece and a medical theory that dominated Western thought for the next 2 millennia, the 4 humors. The idea was simple. Your body is a container for 4 fluids, and your personality is determined by whichever fluid is most dominant. If you have excess blood, you're sanguine, cheerful, sociable, optimistic. Too much phlegm makes you phlegmatic, calm, sluggish, hard to ruse. Yellow bile makes you choleric, angry, ambitious, quick to fight. And then there was the 4th humor, black bile, melancholy in Greek, melancholy. Black bile was the darkest of the fluids, and having too much of it was dangerous. It can make you sick, erratic, consumed by irrational fears. But here's where things get interesting. Around the 4th century BC, a text appeared that would change everything. It's called Problemata 30, and it's attributed to Aristotle, though it was probably written by one of his students. The question it opens with is startling. Why is it that all those who have become eminent in philosophy or politics or poetry or the arts are clearly of an atrabilious temperament? Atrabilious, full of black bile, melancholic. The argument is this: genius requires melancholy. A properly balanced person, someone cheerful and even-tempered, might live a pleasant life, but they'll never create anything profound. They lack the edge, the darkness, the ability to see beneath the surface of things. To truly be great, you need black bile running through your veins. You need to be touched by melancholy. This became medical orthodoxy, not a fringe idea. For the next 2,000 years, doctors, philosophers, and theologians agreed melancholy was the price of intellectual greatness. By the time we reach the Renaissance, this theory has evolved into something even stranger. Melancholy becomes fashionable. Intellectuals in the 1400s and 1500s don't just accept their melancholic temperament, they actively try to induce it. They want to appear deep, brooding, touched by Saturn, the planet associated with scholars and sadness. One of the most influential voices here is Marsilio Ficino, the Italian philosopher who translated Plato's complete works into Latin and ran the Platonic Academy in Florence. Ficino is obsessed with melancholy. He writes entire treatises about it, and his reasoning is striking. He argues that the intellectual life requires a kind of death. In his 1489 work, 3 Books on Life, Ficino writes, "But of all learned people, those especially are oppressed by black bile who, being sedulously devoted to the study of philosophy, recall their mind from the body and corporeal things and apply it to incorporeal things. The cause is, first, that the more difficult the work, the greater concentration of mind it requires, and second, that the more they apply their mind to incorporeal truth, the more they are compelled to disjoin it from the body. Hence their body is often rendered as if it were half alive and often melancholic." Think about what he's saying. To understand the world, you have to pull away from it. You have to sit apart. You have to feel the distance between yourself and everything you love. That distance, that separation, that awareness of your own mortality, that's melancholy. And according to Ficino, that's also the only way to access wisdom. This makes sense when you think of how Renaissance paintings of scholars always show them looking miserable. Head in hand, staring at a skull, surrounded by books they'll never finish. It's a visual language everyone understood. This person thinks deeply, so of course they're sad. Be happy all the time, to smile constantly, to never sink into contemplation. That was seen as bovine, simple, the mark of someone who has never truly grappled with the nature of existence. Melancholy in this era wasn't something to cure, it was something to cultivate. By the 17th and 18th centuries, something even stranger happens. Melancholy stops being just a side effect of genius and becomes something people actively seek out for pleasure. This is the era of the sublime, the idea that certain experiences, standing at the edge of a cliff, watching a storm roll in over the ocean, walking through ancient ruins, produces a feeling that's more complex than simple happiness. It's a mix of awe and terror and sadness all at once, and you can only access it if you're willing to feel melancholic. The Romantics became obsessed with this. They don't just write about sadness, they chase it, they engineer it. There's even a term for it in German, Ruinenlust, lust for ruins. Wealthy landowners in England and Germany start building fake Roman ruins on their estates, architectural follies designed to look ancient from the day they were built. Crumbling columns, broken arches, and artificial decay. And it gets weirder. Some landowners actually hired ornamental hermits. These were real men paid to live in makeshift caves on the property, contractually obligated to grow their beards, not bathe, stay silent, and look contemplative. They were human props, living statues of sadness, placed there to ensure the owner could feel that specific, delicious weight of melancholy whenever they took a garden stroll. It wasn't about being ironic, and it wasn't performance art. They genuinely believe that melancholy gives life texture. Happiness, they argue, is smooth. It's pleasant, but it slides right off you. You can't hold on to it. But melancholy sticks. It has weight. It makes you feel the contours of existence. It forces you to confront the fact that everything beautiful is also temporary, and that awareness, that bittersweet ache, is what makes you feel most alive. The person who captures this sentiment best is probably Robert Burton. In 1621, he publishes The Anatomy of Melancholy, a massive, sprawling encyclopedia of sadness. It's over 1,000 pages long. It covers everything from the medical causes of melancholy to its philosophical implications to how it affects different professions. It became one of the most widely read books in Europe. And Burton's position is clear. He's not trying to cure melancholy, he's trying to celebrate it. He writes, "All my joys to this are folly, not so sweet as melancholy." Burton is describing melancholy the way someone today might describe their favorite song or a perfect meal. It's something he returns to, something he craves, and he's far from alone. Victor Hugo, writing in 1866, distills the entire sentiment into one perfect sentence. Melancholy is the happiness of being sad. The happiness of being sad. This is the paradox at the heart of the Romantic era. They've discovered that sadness, when approached correctly, when savored rather than medicated away, produces its own kind of joy, a richer, deeper, and more textured joy than simple cheerfulness ever could. The poet John Keats takes this even further. In his Ode on Melancholy, written in 1819, he writes, "But when the melancholy fit shall fall, sudden from heaven like a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose." Don't numb it, he's saying. When melancholy arrives, lean into it, intensify it. Go look at something beautiful and let yourself feel the full weight of knowing it will fade. Let the sadness sharpen the beauty. Let the beauty deepen the sadness. This is as far from our current moment as you could possibly get. But this view wouldn't last, because while poets were writing odes to sadness, something else was happening. Factories were being built, and factories had no use for people who wanted to sit in fake ruins and contemplate mortality. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change how we make things, it changed how we think about time itself. Before factories, most people worked according to the rhythms of agriculture or craft. You worked until the task was done. Harvest season was brutal, but winter was slow. A blacksmith might spend an entire afternoon on a single piece, adjusting, reconsidering, staring into the fire. Time was circular, seasonal, flexible. Factories ended that. In a factory, time is linear and standardized. The machine runs at a specific speed, and you have to match it. You clock in at the same time every day. You perform the same motion every few seconds. Efficiency is everything, consistency is everything, and melancholy is the enemy of both. Because melancholy is slow, it requires stopping, staring out windows, losing yourself in thought. A melancholic worker is a bad worker. They hesitate, they drift, they break the rhythm of the line. So the question became, how do you remove melancholy from the workforce? At first, it was simple coercion, work faster or you're fired. But by the early 20th century, something more sophisticated was happening. Industrial psychologists, newly credentialed experts in human efficiency, were being hired by factory owners to study how to make workers more productive. One of the most influential was Hugo Münsterberg, a German psychologist who worked with Henry Ford. Münsterberg's job was to figure out how to optimize not just the assembly line, but the workers on it. He developed tests to screen out people who were temperamentally unsuited for factory work. He studied fatigue, attention, motivation. He wrote books with titles like Psychology and Industrial Efficiency. The same methods used to optimize workflows were now being turned inward, onto the workers themselves. Your mind wasn't your own anymore. It was part of the machine, and if your mind wandered into melancholy, you weren't just wasting your time, you were sabotaging the entire operation. Psychology as a discipline began to formalize what industry already needed: a clear division between acceptable and unacceptable emotional states. Enter Sigmund Freud. In 1917, Freud publishes an essay called Mourning and Melancholia, and in it he draws a sharp line. Mourning, he says, is normal. You lost someone, you're sad. Eventually you'll heal and move on. That's healthy and that's natural. But melancholia is pathological. In melancholia, Freud argues, you're not mourning an external loss, you're mourning something broken inside yourself. He writes, in mourning, it is the world which has become poor and empty. In melancholia, it is the ego itself. This is the moment. This is when melancholy moves from philosophy to pathology. What was once considered the mark of a deep thinker, that vague, sourceless sadness, that contemplative withdrawal from the soul, is now reclassified as a symptom of a disordered mind. The transformation was complete. For 2,000 years, melancholy had been a sign of genius, a pathway to the sublime, an experience worth savoring. Now it was a diagnosis, a disorder, something to be identified, labeled, and if possible, cured. And if you think that was the end of it, you're wrong, because in the next 100 years, the pressure to eliminate melancholy would intensify even further. If the factory made melancholy inefficient, the service economy made it unacceptable. By the 1950s and 60s, in developed nations, the nature of work was changing. Fewer people were making physical products. More people were selling experiences. Airlines, hotels, restaurants, retail stores. And in this new economy, your emotional state wasn't just your own business anymore. It was part of the product. Flight attendants were the test case. In the 1960s, airlines produced training material for their stewardesses that read like instruction booklets for robots. There were actual diagrams showing the correct angle for a smile, illustrations of acceptable versus unacceptable facial expressions. You were taught how to tilt your head when greeting a passenger, how long to maintain eye contact, how to modulate your voice to sound perpetually pleasant, even when someone was screaming at you. Your face was company property, your emotions were company property, and melancholy wasn't just discouraged, it was contractually prohibited. If a supervisor noticed you looked sad, even for a moment, you could be pulled aside for retraining or fired. This wasn't unique to airlines. The same standard spread to retail workers, salespeople, call center employees, anyone whose job involved interacting with customers. You were monitored for friendliness scores, evaluated on emotional tone, docked pay if you weren't enthusiastic enough. The shift happened fast. Within a generation, emotional labor became as common as physical labor, maybe more common. The logic of the service economy colonized private life. If you had to perform happiness at work, why would you allow yourself to feel sad at home? Sadness became something to manage, to suppress, to optimize away. By 2026, we're living in the late stages of this process. We don't just track our steps and our sleep and our calories anymore. We track our moods. There are apps for it. Graphs showing your emotional patterns over weeks and months, and any sustained dip in the line is treated as a failure, a problem to solve. You're supposed to identify the trigger, adjust your habits, get the line back up. We've turned ourselves into the assembly line and the product at the same time. The factory psychology has completed its inward turn. You are both the worker who must be optimized and the machine that must run at peak efficiency. And if you can't keep up, the culture has an answer for that too. Toxic positivity. Good vibes only. The insistence that negativity is a choice, that sadness is a lack of discipline, that if you're not happy, it's because you're not trying hard enough. We've lost the social script for sitting with bad news, for allowing someone to be sad without immediately trying to fix them. Every emotion has to be justified, explained, and ideally resolved within a single conversation. The internet has accelerated all of this. You can't just be sad online. You have to contextualize it, perform it correctly, make it relatable or funny or inspirational. Raw melancholy, the kind that has no clear cause, no narrative arc, no resolution, doesn't fit anywhere. It just makes people uncomfortable. Remember Aristotle's question, why are all the great philosophers and poets melancholic? If we succeed in eliminating melancholy entirely, do we also eliminate the kind of thinking that requires it? The willingness to sit with difficult questions that have no easy answers. The ability to look at the world without flinching and see it clearly, even when what you see is painful. We haven't cured sadness, we've just made it unacceptable, and in doing so, we've created a new kind of exhaustion. The philosopher byung-chul describes this perfectly in The Burnout Society. He writes, "The complaint of the depressive individual, nothing is possible, can only occur in a society that thinks nothing is impossible. We're depressed because we're exhausted by the demand to be constantly positive, constantly productive, constantly optimizing. We've replaced the brooding genius with the high-functioning burnout, and we're told this is progress. But what if it's not? What if we've traded something essential for something hollow?" So where does that leave us? This isn't an argument against treating clinical depression. If you're suffering, if you can't function, if the weight is crushing you, get help. See the therapist. Depression is real, and we should take it seriously. But melancholy isn't depression, and the fact that we've lost the ability to tell the difference is the problem. Melancholy isn't broken. What's broken is a culture that can't distinguish between I am sad and I am malfunctioning. We've been taught to treat every dip in mood as a system error that requires immediate correction. But some sadness doesn't need to be fixed. Some sadness is just the appropriate response to being a finite creature in a world where everything you love will eventually end. The Romantics understood this. Burton understood this. Even the ancient Greeks understood this. Melancholy wasn't a malfunction, it was a feature of consciousness. The ability to feel it meant you were paying attention. It meant you were awake to the texture of existence. To reclaim melancholy isn't about rejecting modernity or deleting your apps or moving to a cabin in the woods. It's simpler than that, and harder. It's about rejecting the premise that every emotional state must be justified by productivity, that every feeling must be optimized, tracked, and resolved. In a world that treats you like a machine that should always be running at peak efficiency, choosing to stop, to feel the weight of time, to acknowledge loss without rushing to process it, to stare out the window for no productive reason, is an act of positive nonconformity. Not against technology, not against progress, but against the idea that being human requires an apology. Melancholy is the proof that you're more than the sum of your optimized outputs. And maybe, in reclaiming it, we reclaim something else too. The permission to be complex, to feel things that don't resolve neatly or serve a clear purpose. The permission to be sad and to let that be enough. Thank you so much for watching. This was Folks of Yore. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing, and leave a comment about your thoughts. See you next time.